Lots of familiar names. Welcome back. If you've been to our webinars before, you know how this works. We'd love to have you. As you have questions, so all the housekeeping stuff, yes, we are recording this, and we will send you a recording after the webinar. We usually get it out depending on how fast Zoom is. Excuse me. We'll get it out to you by the end of the day, if not first thing tomorrow. If you don't see it, your first place to look is your spam folder. Sometimes it gets caught up there, but we will send you a recording and you can access the slides and all that good stuff. Also, as you have questions, and on this topic, I think we're going to have a ton of questions. So we even structured the presentation to get through our recommendations and then take a ton of individual questions from folks. So hit the Q&A button. That way it pops up on my screen and on Lauren's screen. Don't wait for the end. Do it as you think of it. That way we can kind of tackle it as we go. And with that, I am so proud to be here. Austen has joined us before, but Lauren, I am shocked. This is your inaugural webinar. Is that right?
The first long form, yes.
The first long form, because Lauren was a star of our pre-BBCon webinar. So we are happy to have you here. Austen and Lauren are both Razor's Edge geniuses, so they're going to share their knowledge with us. And who, when I say us, let's start with who we are and whether it's worth listening to us. We all work for a company called Prenger Solutions Group. Our people are amazing. We're small and mighty. There's about 15 of us, and we've worked for all the organizations on the screen and hundreds more. We do fundraising consulting. We do annual appeal management. We also do Razor's Edge database administration, which is something we kind of fell into because in our work doing fundraising consulting, we ended up really getting deep into Razor's Edge, and we got so good at it that clients said, hey, will you just help us run our Razor's Edge? So we said yes. And we also do some really cool things in fundraising automation. Many of you on the call today use one of the tools that we put out there called Ask Genius. We're very proud of this. Basically, we built Ask Genius to solve a really painful problem we were having in our consulting work, which is how do you set the perfect ask amount for everyone on your mailing list? If you're a college or a university and you're sending out tens of thousands of pieces of direct mail, you want to ask everybody for the perfect amount. Ask Genius is the tool that goes through and crunches all those numbers based on giving history and wealth research and everything else you've got in your database, spits out the ask string. It's incredible. If you're not using it yet, would love to have a chance to show it off to you. And our newest product, Austen is heavily involved in this, Automate Genius. So the sister product of Ask Genius, Automate Genius, is for those Razor's Edge users. If you use Razor's Edge, we then connect you to Power Automate, which is an incredible software tool from Microsoft. And then we can connect you to basically any other software in the world to do a whole bunch of amazing things. We've got webinars on this. I think we've got some more demos coming up. That's background on who we are. So we do fundraising consulting. In the course of that fundraising consulting, we ended up solving some problems with software, and then we kind of put the software out into the world, and now the software stuff has taken off, and we've got a wait list, and we've stopped taking on consulting clients. But we do give away everything we've ever learned for free. So if you haven't visited our new and revamped page, Rob Sims, whose camera is off, is the guy who did all the work here. All of these webinars that we've done over the years, and we're about 4 years in now, we've got them neatly packaged now. So you can go and you can search by topic if you want to learn about year-end giving, if you want to learn about how to design the best donation page, if you want to talk about pledge cards, go there. It's on askgenius.com. Rob can drop the link in here for you. It's full of goodies. It's got webinars, it's got downloads. Everything we learn, we give away for free, right? Just like we're doing today. Okay, that housekeeping out of the way. That's who we are. That's what we do. We'd love to show off our software products, but that's not what we're here about today. Today, we're talking about a really sexy topic, right? Campaigns, funds, and appeals inside of Razor's Edge, right? The stuff that we all want to talk about all the time. We're going to start with definitions. And Austen, I'm going to lean on you for this, okay?
Yeah.
We hear the terms, campaigns, funds, appeals. Going to the knowledge base, I'm going to walk through those 4: campaigns, funds, appeals, and packages. This is what Blackbaud says it is paragraph here, and it's actually pretty well written, so kudos to them. You tell me, I'll put them all on the screen. Campaigns, funds, appeals, what are they in layman's terms?
All right, so a campaign is sort of that overarching theme of like buckets of fundraising. So it tends to be like your annual campaign, things that are evergreen, if that makes sense. Funds are where the money is going to. So for the most part, that would be like a general operating fund, but you might have a donor that says, I want my money to go, specifically to scholarships, right? So that would have its own fund in your system, and that's how you would put the gift. Appeals are where the money is coming from or the initiatives on how you fundraised that money. So direct mail appeals, third-party events, that sort of thing. What did you do outside in the world to get money? And then you keep track of it through an appeal.
Is it safe to say appeals are nested beneath campaigns? Is that right?
Yes, that's a good way to look at it. And in the system, you can set defaults so that they all work together.
The odds of you answering yes to that were 0. I thought for sure I was going to get well, it depends, right? Because that's the answer to everything. But I'm going to take the win.
As with all things related to this topic, it is a best practice, but you can kind of do it however you want.
Right. Okay. So what about the last one? Swirly little appeal package code things. What are those?
That's additional detail on the appeal, right? So if you need to further define the appeal, a good example would be sent out a direct mail appeal. That might involve multiple channels of communication. So that could be an email, that could be a letter, that could be multiple letters. You would track those sort of segments per se or communications within a package.
Okay, awesome. All right, we got the boring part out of the way. Now we get to the really fun stuff. I want to walk through, not to say that's boring. I don't mean to diminish everyone's life's work. That's the hundreds of people that are on the call here, but I think we can all agree the definition section is the boring part of it. Let's talk about a standard setup, okay? So if I am a nonprofit organization, I just want to put up a standard sort of best practice template. How would you set this up? Let's use as an example, I'm just going to, out of thin air, pull a random best university in the country and put it on the screen. We'll use them as our example. So Creighton Blue Jays. Let's go with them. So you're Creighton University, okay? Austen, we've got campaign fund appeal packages across the top. So if I'm Creighton, and to be clear, this may not be how Creighton sets it up, but just to give us the example so we can all understand what it looks like in a standard, normal way, and then we can give our feedback on why things should be different. Okay, Creighton, for their campaign, they have their annual fund appeal, right? Creighton University annual fund appeal. For their fund, they've got a default setting of Creighton University operating fund. For their appeal, based on what I'm here saying, it should be annual appeal 2024. And as I understand it, this campaign fund, sorry, the campaign would never change. It's what we would call evergreen. Okay, it's always the campaign. The fund would never change. It would always be the general operating fund. But then every year they would have a new appeal, right? So it'd be annual appeal 2024, annual appeal 2025. Packages, as I understand it from us preparing for this webinar, packages might be something like grandparents appeal, the parents appeal, the alumni appeal, the different strategies and tactics within the annual fund appeal. Or it could be the mailings, right? The advanced mailing package or the general mailing or the in-person. Austen, is this fair, a fair representation of sort of a standard how people might set it up?
Yes, and of course there's deviations in it for different things, but just a basic setup, this would be the way to do it.
Okay. All right, so this is basic setup, and yes, we will send you all these slides again if you're a beginner. This is a really helpful tool, I think, for you. Now, let's talk about why Lauren absolutely hates everything about what you see on the screen here. Okay, so we're going to move into the section called "Why Lauren Hates Using Package Codes." Lauren, welcome to the webinar. Lauren's first inaugural long-form webinar for us. Lauren's our senior database consultant, very smart, very experienced. Lauren, why are you so down on package codes? What is it that you hate about them?
They're not user-friendly.
Okay.
I didn't even read that slide, but that is exactly why I don't like them.
We had a long discussion about it, and I boiled it down into two things, and then you can expand on it if you want. But why are they not user-friendly? It seems like a great idea to me.
So I manage a couple of different databases, and we have lots going on, and I cannot remember every individual package for every appeal. When I'm trying to build a report, the way that Razor's Edge has them set up, when you do an appeal, a campaign, a fund, or an appeal, you can type in the first letter, the first 3 letters or numbers, and it will pull up everything in that list. Packages do not work that way. You have to type in the packages and the spacing ideally. And maybe this year I put in 24 space grandparents. And last year I put in 23 grandparents. And
Yep.
I don't know why I did it differently, but it makes life a lot harder than it needs to be.
There's no visual interface where you're building a report. You can go in and be like, I'm going to click on all these package codes because I want them in my report. Is that
Correct.
right?
That is correct.
Oof. Okay. I get it. You're converting me over. What about the thing with online gifts?
Our ENXT donation forms let you narrow to a fund and let you default a campaign and an appeal. They pretend that packages don't exist. So if I'm using packages, either I just miss that data for my online gifts that came in through an NXT form, or I have to go back in and touch every single gift again and assign it to a package, which I neither have time nor interest to do.
Do you think that that is a representative response of all DBAs out there who are thinking, I'm going to go into every single gift that came in and by hand to do something?
That's exactly what every DBA wants to do, is go touch every single gift that they've automated online to reduce touching any.
Love it. Okay. So the general, and there's a bunch of great questions coming in. So we're gonna get to the questions here. I'm reading through them in case there's anything topical that we want to jump in. It's safe to say Lauren's opinions on package codes are a big thumbs down. Okay. So let's get into your recommended structure. So we have, oh, there we go, Lauren's recommended structure. So going back to where we were, this is sort of the standard template that's out there. Lauren, let's show what you would do different. Okay. So you would take, instead of one big appeal, right? You get rid of those dang old package codes there, but you would have, tell me what you do. Explain what's on the slide here.
Essentially, I segment my appeal with just different. I append different, the name of the package would be appended to the appeal, just like you have listed there. So this is the 2024 annual appeal still, that hasn't changed, but now the grandparents get that assignment as well as their gifts that come in, or, you know, the general mailing, the in-person meetings, whatever.
Yep. So is it fair to say that you're taking what could be done in packages, you're bringing it up a level in the hierarchy? Correct. Okay. So let's talk about the benefits and then let's talk about the cons of that. Okay. Why do you like it?
I want to make everything easier because there's a lot of things in life we can't make easier. So the things that I can, I will. If you're using database view, it's a lot easier to build your queries. Hopefully we'll see that in WebView soon. It's easier to build your reports. And in my opinion, it's better tracking because your data can be more consistent more often. And consistent data, even if it's consistently wrong, is better than haphazard data, in my opinion.
Well said. Okay. Tell me about, so reports, NXT forms, what are we talking about there?
Donation forms.
Donation
So
forms.
I can add an appeal to a donation form. So then I know that depending on how I segment my forms, either only the grandparents got this donation form, and that's how it comes in. It comes in as a grandparent. And if I want to be even more granular, perhaps I have a grandparents online and a grandparents mail.
Yep.
It just depends on how I want to look at and how I want to report.
Yep. That reminds me, we did, if Rob could do me a favor and drop it, we did a great webinar on how PSG sets up donation pages. So the old days, it would be you had one donation page and everybody kind of went there. Those days were gone, right? On any of our clients that we're tasked with raising millions of dollars for, there might be 12 or 15 or 20 donation pages, right? For this is the grandparents donation page. This is a low level first time donors donation page. They don't know any different. It's just we're taking them to different pages. And then Lauren, what I'm hearing you say is we can then tie those pages back to the reporting and the appeal to make life a little bit easier. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So we have a webinar. We'll there you go. Thank you, Rob. So we got the link in there. Again, as we've done more and more of these, every time we get in a topic, I just want to make sure I'm directing people to, if you want to explore that topic, go nuts. It's one of our most popular ones, the donation page webinar. Okay. There's a ton of questions in the chat. I just want to remind people, make sure to put them in the Q&A. And some people raise their hands because this is a topic everybody wants to dive into. Put them in the Q&A so that we can mark them off when we answer them. If they're in the chat, I guarantee you I'm going to lose track of them as more and more people type. There's a quick question about, won't this, Lauren, lead to a whole bunch of, like, what if you have a ton of different segments, right? Is there what are the downsides to your approach of having multiple appeals?
You may not like it, and that's your prerogative. First of all, that's the thing. I'm running my databases. You can run yours. And Amanda specifically said I may not want to keep 20 to 25 20 to 25 appeals for each of our 3 because the list gets really long. Yes, that is true. But if you're doing 20 to 25 packages per appeal, because a package is a subset under an appeal, you're already doing that many different things. Again, it's going to depend on how you're reporting, but it's really just where you're going to have a long list. Are you going to have a long list of appeals or a long list of packages? Totally
Right.
totally your preference.
Good point. And some of it too is just how you visualize it, right? Like what your personal preference is going to be if you like to package things, nest things under different. I mean, I guess I find your argument compelling in that if you're going to have a large list either way, I hear you saying that it's better to have a larger list, at least at the level that you can report on it, right? That you can
Right.
click on it and create that. What about you, Austen? So as Lauren talks this through, what's your take on this? Is all of PSG feel the same way about this? What do you think about package codes and appeals and this pros and cons here?
I've done it both ways, so I can see the benefits of both methods. I think I prefer the sort of like the way Blackbaud has it laid out is the way I learned it. And so I'm always partial to that method that you have your campaigns, your funds, your appeals, and then packages are a separate thing. But with how WebView is being set up and what's available to us within that area right now, and understanding the importance of being able to query on GIFs coming through specific forms, in the moment, I'm more inclined to do Lauren's method until packages exist in WebView.
So is it fair to describe this as, okay, there's a best practice, yes, in a perfect world, campaign fund appeal packages like we first laid it out. We're not in the perfect world because we're straddling database view and web view, and there's some functions that aren't available. So this is a bridging solution. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that. And really, what it comes down to is everyone will have their own method for doing this. And Razor's Edge is a great software product because it can accommodate all those methods. But it really boils down to your organization, what you need for reporting, and what's best for you.
Yep. Got it. Okay. So let's, man, I love all these questions here. We're going to we consolidate like 6 or 7 pieces of advice that I think address a bunch of these questions, and then we're going to get into it, right? So all the questions that people have, we'll do a lightning round with Lauren and Austen. So general advice on this topic as we're looking at campaigns, funds, appeals, how to set things up. What are some things that we found? Again, we do this. I believe PSG is the largest consumer of Razor's Edge in the world. We manage a whole bunch of really large databases. We've seen everything large and small. We have opinions on the matter. Let's start here. There's no one structure, is what Austen was saying, right? There's no one structure solution that works for everyone. That's clear. That's probably clear if we just polled the hundreds of people on the call here today. People are going to have really strong opinions, right? But if you're looking for what should I do? Maybe I'm brand new, or maybe I just know my database is a mess and I want to change things. It's time to do a little cleanup. Start by understanding the reporting. Okay. And Lauren and Austen, you both independently said this is your number one recommendation. And what I heard from you is the reports that you need to generate, whether for finance or development or your board or your executive director, the reports really dictate the way that you set this up, right? What you do, the structure of whether you're doing appeals or package codes or anything else. Lauren, can you just explain a little bit about that or share thoughts? What do we mean by saying start with reporting?
It's a lot easier to build your structure and how you record data if you know how you're going to get it out, right? So we can't get something out that we don't put in, essentially.
Yep.
So if you want to know how your grandparents are giving, how your parents are giving, how your alumni are giving, you've got to make sure you record the gifts that come in from each of those groups. If your board is more concerned about, I don't know, zip code giving, then it doesn't really matter what your appeal is, and you can call them, you can have one appeal because you can do zip code in another way. We don't want to make things more complicated. Again, like I said, life is hard enough. We don't need to make it harder. But I would start with, and those of us who have inherited databases with structures we don't like, before you make a change, and I'm all for making a change if it needs to happen, figure out what people want to know and how they want to know it so that you can set up a data structure that works for your team.
Yep. And I think this is the point at which we should say, this is not the end all be all, right? So yes, you want to set it up the right way to make your life easier. In Lauren's example, if she sets it up a certain way based on they want grandparent and alumni giving and everything else, and then somebody asks about zip code giving, it's not like that's walled off to you, right? Like there's always a way to pull the data out. This is why I think 80% of Blackbaud users and Power users are living in Access, right? You can always grab the information, pull it out, and then mess around in Access and Excel. So it's really, we're just talking about making your life easier in terms of being able to create the reports, create the dashboards. It doesn't wall off an answer to you, but it just makes, you want to automate. You want to be fast. You want to be streamlined. Okay. All right. So start with the reporting. It's great advice. Actually, let me back up to that for a second. So from the development side of things, right? So not on the data side. I can see this happening at an org where development director is like, I need you to decide, set up our system or fix something. And then the database manager comes back and says, well, I need to know the reports. And I know you're going to end up in that catch-22. The leadership's going to be like, well, I don't know what it is, just do it. So I just also want to be clear that we live in a messy world. And if you ask the question of, well, what do the reports need to look like? They're going to say, I have no idea. Show me a sample of report. So I just want to make sure that I'm acknowledging the fact that I know that it can at times be messy. Okay, helpful tidbits. Think of this as our lightning round. What else do we wish we knew, or what do we wish people would tell us when embarking on restructuring? Lauren, you've had to do this a bunch, right, for clients that had messy databases. And so tell me, if somebody says, or if we come in, we're like, we got to clean this up. Why can't we just clean it up going forward? Why do you have to go back so many years?
I would go back at least the number of years that somebody's going to want to compare, because you can do it. It's a lot more difficult to compare apples to apples in a new structure and an old structure. So the couple of clients I did, we went back to 2019 because 2020 was such a weird year everywhere. And I did it, I think 2 years apart for each client, but in both cases, we went back to 2019 so that we could have at least 2019. One, we went back all the way to 17 so that we could compare trends and see what was going on without having to remember, oh wait, we changed that to this, so I need X, Y, and Z here, but I need A, B, and C here.
And this speaks to me too, just the idea of, I can see reformatting and say, okay, this is what we're going to use going forward, but that's not going to stop all of your leadership development people from asking for comparisons. You're going to end up doing the work anyway, so might as well do it once, and that way you can prove out that the reports work and everything versus having to go back and manually configure stuff. Okay. This actually, I think I saw this come up in the chat, right? So your funds should be evergreen. I'm going to ask you, Austen, about this. Why would you not have a fund be so I understand why it should be evergreen, because it's tied to general ledger and all that stuff, but like, why would you maybe not have a fund be evergreen?
Usually it comes down to tracking what's brought in against a goal, right? So if a fund has a particular goal associated with it and the goal is updated every year, then it's difficult to have side-by-side comparison of a goal year over year if you make your funds be evergreen.
Got it.
And there are strategies to get around that. If you want your funds to be evergreen, you could use a couple fund attributes or custom fields instead. But some people like the more streamlined, I can export this out and see this, like Lauren was saying, apples to apples, right? And that's what they need for their reporting. Right.
So this is a perfect example of what we were just talking about in terms of like starting with the reporting. If you are at a client, like I can think of the use case, the consulting work that PSG does is for large Catholic dioceses, and they all have annual goals, right? So many of our clients do this, right? They change the fund every year because they need to be able to report progress towards a certain goal. Okay, Lauren, anything to add there? Does all that make sense?
I was just going to piggyback to answer Taylor's question, who said, can we just leave the campaign and the fund evergreen, still have the automated reports be effective? If you want to track an annual goal, automated reports that are native to both database and WebView Insight Designer, or just their regular NXT WebView reports, will not track a goal if you change it, because there's only a fund goal is a one-to-one.
So you can't have multiple annual fund. Okay.
Yeah. So you would need an annual fund.
Yeah. So this is what a great example. This is such a messy thing. So in general, a good practice is to have funds be evergreen, and people touched on this, right? Because you're touching finance office, and there's like, I love even how I think Audrey said it, how it's a negotiated truce, right, between finance and development. But if it's really important to track against a goal, then you have no other choice, right? That is the way to do it to be able to track against a goal. We heard, and I saw somebody else ask a question about this, like, what about funds with dates? Austen, is this true? We want to avoid funds with dates.
Yeah, I
Same
mean,
topic, I guess. But
I've always used funds as like the evergreen methodology, right? That you can just keep them. And I agree with Andrea that I worked in offices where funds are very highly contested between finance and development, and every time we added a new fund, we had to consult with finance. So it was just easier overall just to use the same fund from year to year.
Yep, got it. Okay. Other helpful tidbits. This was eye-opening to me just to think about it in this way. I think Lauren, you're the one that brought it up. Like if you're using Insight Designer, right? If you're using Razor's Edge in the way that it should be used, which is like your report, you can click a button and get somebody the report they need, and your life is easy, and you've got it all set up properly. If you're doing that, this matters a ton, right? Like this is a topic that is important to you, so you can get the reports you need. If you're just pulling everything out and you bringing it into Excel or Access to create your reports, then what else, right? Like you can do whatever you want. Like you're going to pull out the data. Don't kill yourself thinking about campaigns and funds and package codes. Like if you can get the data and export it, then what you need, then great, keep doing that. Lauren, is that accurate?
100%.
Okay. So for everybody out there that's like, I'm gonna ride or die with Access and Excel, cool. You can log off from the webinar right now. Keep doing what you're doing. If you want to be able to use some canned reporting, then that is why this matters. Okay.
Taylor wanted me to clarify, are we saying leave evergreen or change to yearly? It depends on the report you want to make. That's really as clear as I can get. If you want more specific, ask another specific question, but that's the answer is
It
depends
depends
on
on
what
it
you want
depends
your
on the
report to do.
on how you do it. Is it fair to say a general rule is an evergreen fund with one of the major exceptions that we see is if you need to report annual progress towards a goal year over year.
Year over year.
Year over year. If you want to progress towards goal in 23, progress towards goal in 24, you can't do that with an evergreen fund.
Not in a native report.
Got it. Okay. As with always, you can always do anything you want in Excel or Access. Okay. One other thing just worth mentioning, if you're using scan lines, many of our clients are, but all the Ask Genius clients that are setting those personalized ask amounts, typically your pledge card's got a little code on the bottom, looks like this. Everything's going to have an alphanumeric ID. That's probably a whole other webinar topic. We want to talk about scan lines and check digits and mod 10 and all that stuff. Maybe we'll do a poll and find out if people want us to really dive in there. We touched on this a little bit. It's worth highlighting. Your finance office will have very, very strong opinions on how you set up and how you use funds. Austen, do you want to speak to this? Why do they care? Why do they care so much?
Because of how data moves between Razor's Edge and Financial Edge. So if your finance department has Financial Edge, then information is communicated from one system to the other through funds. And on the back end of fund records, every single fund record in Razor's Edge, your finance person has to go in and code in all the GL account numbers and projects that this fund relates to and how it's going to be divided up in that integration when gifts are sent over. And so their strong opinions usually revolve around, well, if you replace all the funds every year, then this is a huge project for us on an annual basis to link up all the things that need to be linked up so that gifts can be posted.
So what I'm hearing you say is if you're new to database administration at an organization, a good way to make friends in the finance is not to willy-nilly add new funds, move things around on the fund side, because there's huge ramifications.
Yes, I would, if a gift comes in and none of your funds match it, right, it will always involve a conversation with
Yep.
finance because they need to keep track of this money too.
Yep. So what's a normal process like? So if you're at a large organization, is there like a form you fill out, like the development team, database team wants to add a new fund, finance says, okay, fill out this paperwork so we know what to do with it? Is that how it goes?
I would imagine on a bigger team that there might be a more formalized process. The teams I've worked on in the past, it's orgs less than 40 employees. It's more like send the CFO an email or stop by their office, send them a direct message type thing, say, hey,
Yep.
we got this gift coming, we need to create a new fund. And then it's usually a larger conversation on what it's going to be named, how is it going to be coded, do you need this today, kind of thing, all that sort of
Yep.
stuff.
Okay, awesome. I think this is our final tidbit before I have my big question that I have for Lauren and Austen to kick us off. Final advice, Lauren, I think you said it well. So as we're thinking through this, we can really nerd out on the best structure and we can argue about package codes and everything else. Tell me about why do you not want to overcome, like, does this really impact many organizations? Like what scale, like how much weight should we put into this whole topic, Lauren, as we're looking at the role of a database?
The structure is very important because, again, our data and how it is, how it works. I don't want to say don't put a lot of thought in it because I think you should. I also know that different directors have different opinions and preferences on how data should be reported. So that things are going to change. Probably the least popular thing I'm going to say right now comes here is I think DBA should be at every planning meeting and department meeting and all the meetings. In my last role, I think I went to 8 weekly meetings for every department so that I could help everybody get all the reports they wanted. Because then when do you work, right? If you're in a meeting, you're not working. But because you need to pivot, and that's what database managers do, not just your heads on a pivot, your feet too. You're always looking at all the things. Then you don't want to overcomplicate it, because if you get too granular, or you're going to get so granular and have the perfect report and perfect way to track it, and then 2 weeks later finance is going to say, oh, but for this grant we need it tracked this way.
Yes.
Well, okay, we'll do it again.
It's tell me if this is true. It seems to me that with our clients, we see a lot more pain and suffering from a DBA that has gotten too specific and too granular, and then having to like exit back out of that. Like, and I understand I'm kind of wired that way, right? I'm a guy that likes folders and subfolders on, to the 17th degree. But it feels like a lot of the pain is like you do try and set up that world's perfect system for everything, and then it blows up a day later, versus committing yourself to stay somewhat general, have a good structure in place, but be fluid, knowing that you can always get the granular stuff that you need, from within that system. Does that make sense? Is that a fair assessment? Okay.
And I have clients who use our recommended multi-appeal convention, which is my preference, and also packages. And to me, you look at it, you're like, that is too much information, but that's what they need in order to get the reports that they want. So
Right. And they live with it. They're like, I know this is messy, but it's the way it is. I need it for these reasons and it works for us. So yeah. That leads into, this is a question somebody asked earlier, I think, and it's the one that always comes to my mind, right? So I do not live inside a razor's edge. I live on the other side, on the fundraising side and the, asking for report side of things. So Lauren and Austen, this is always my big question. Gift comes in the door. Okay. How do we report that gift if we're choosing between, is that an alumni letter 1 gift, or is that an online gift? And really what I'm asking here is, what do organizations do? Are we tracking, like, then again, this gets to appeals and package codes and everything else. Can it be both? Is it, when I see reports that say, this happens often, I get a report and it says alumni letter 1 mailing, blah, 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 $100,000, grandpa married, and then there's another one that says online gifts, right? And I'm always like, oh, well, doesn't online gift fit into those? What is this topic? What are we talking about here? How do we solve this? How is this addressed? I open it up to the 2 of you.
yes is the answer.
Okay. Lauren, how do you do this? So if we're working on a big client and I had that question, and their previous reports for there have the vehicle and then they have online gifts, right? Like, what do we do? How do we get that better?
I have a client who doesn't use Insight Designer. We do all of their reports in Excel. and they use an online specific appeal with a number that denotes the letter. So for example, we have alumni letter 1 goes out and the appeal is 24 alumni letter, right?
Mhm.
Then on the online gift, we have, or on the donation form that alumni are directed to give on, it's 23 alumni 1. Alumni letter 2 goes out. We add a new appeal to that form so that we can see, and we don't have to worry about dates. It's just when that appeal drops, we drop it so we can look at it and don't have to reference year over year.
Yep.
I have a client who does use Insight Designer, and they do, that client actually likes a package. So they have an alumni letter package mail, alumni letter package online, and they touch every single gift. I do not touch every single gift,
Right.
but that's what they want to do.
And if they can do it based on, again, this is large and small, right? So for small ones, you have the luxury of being able to get it perfect. For large ones, it's just not possible. Okay. What about, so I'm hearing you say maybe a best practice is it takes nothing to clone out a donation form, right? Like to,
Right.
to swap out a form and to tie it to an appeal. So that's one easy low hanging fruit is don't just have a one size fits all. You can create multiple different forms and track them that way. What about, I know we have some clients that do their best, right? Like if a gift comes in online, they do look at the time and say, well, this is between the time that letter 1 dropped, but before we started doing special events, so they just tag them that way. Does that happen?
That does happen often.
Okay. Austen, anything else? Somebody asked about, is this where gift subtype comes in? And I'm out of my element getting too deep into this, so just
Yeah,
share
you can
thoughts that
use
the folks
gift
want.
subtype for a variety of things. I would say in terms of this conversation, it's not quite as applicable, right? If you're tracking where the gift is coming in from. I've tended to track that in appeals or packages or a combination of both, right? So you could have your appeal be the overall appeal and then all packages, or you could do Lauren's method, or you could do a combination of those so that you could track your what forms your online gifts are coming in. So it's just endless possibilities.
Right.
But yeah, it always goes back to how you want to see the data on the other side and what you need to be successful in your analysis and future decisions.
And it's helpful for me. I know I've said it a bunch of times here, like knowing that no matter how you set this up, you can always get that data, right? Like it's just I know that we can always go back in and say, oh, well, this person's a young alumni and they gave, no matter how they gave, and then be able to create the report. You can always get there. It's just what we're talking about is how can you set things up in a way that it doesn't require a huge lift every time somebody asks a question like that. Okay. So we have tons. I see we've got 14, 15 questions in there and a ton in the chat. Closing notes before we get to Q&A. If you found this helpful at all, and today was a really detailed, they're not always this Razor's Edge specific and detailed, but you can sign up. There's a couple things you can do. We have an Ask Genius newsletter. It goes out about once a month, only if we have something really important to say, if we've done research or a case study, and really that's the spot where you hear about the webinars we have coming up, right? If there's a topic that's of interest to you, donation pages, pledge cards, alumni giving, grateful patient stuff, we'll always let you know in the newsletter. We can drop a link into the chat. I think most of the folks on here are actually already getting that. And then we have 2 products again, if you want to learn more. Automate Genius. This is Austen and the famous Stacy Cope doing amazing automation things. So imagine your major gift officers coming to work, they open up their laptop and there's 10 emails drafted for them sitting inside of Outlook based on stuff that happened inside of Razor's Edge. That's the sort of things you can do with Automate Genius. You can set up a time if you want to talk and learn anything more about that. And Ask Genius, we're doing a demo. So you can schedule a private demo if you want. We've got a couple spots left for next week. Otherwise, we are doing on February 6th, we're doing a big public demo. So if you're not yet using Ask Genius, come on February 6th. It's going to blow your mind how much more money you can raise just by setting the perfect ask amount, right? You work really hard to get all of your data correct inside of Razor's Edge. Use that data to set ask amounts because you're going to raise a whole bunch more money. Okay. Q&A. Austen, have you been scanning? So I've been talking a lot, so I haven't dived in there yet. Where do you want to start? And then as you're talking, I'll look through and kind of prioritize things here.
I've marked a few questions, I guess, that I would like to answer live. So I guess I'll
Have at
just
it.
start with those. We got a question from Sherry. Where do you pull reports via NXT or database view? It really depends on the organization and how you put data in and what you track. So for instance, if you rely heavily on custom fields or attributes, Insight Designer might not be the solution for you. That might be a manual pull from database view or an integration with Tableau or Power BI, where you're able to control the data that's being utilized and how it's used.
Insight Designer is an extra, right?
Yeah, it's an add-on.
Roughly how spicy is that meatball if somebody doesn't have Insight Designer and they have to add it on?
Cost?
28 to 3,000, 2,800 to 3,000.
Yeah, it's like a couple thousand.
Okay. And what's the one thing about Insight Designer? Is there something about events that's not yet in it?
Events are not an Insight Designer.
Yeah.
Or
There's also
really
some-
web view reports.
Yeah, and some fields missing for opportunities and custom
Web
fields.
view.
Also, it's only written in Korean. It only works on
And it
Korean.
has its own language that you have to figure out. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Sorry, Lauren, do you have a favorite one in here? Otherwise, I'm just going to start firing away.
There's a couple about events that I'll just tag. Is that if you want to report on event income in native reporting, you probably need appeals tied to those gifts. I'm working with a client on a project. We're going back 5 years and are going to tag every event gift that came in with an appeal and possibly a package to differentiate, because they're more concerned about the event, but they want the option to do like a ticket versus a sponsorship versus a straight up gift. And although we can report on that in database view, they don't want to use database view for that. They want to use web view reports because it's easier to get to the board.
Yep. Okay. Good question here from Taisha. I've heard, and Austen, this is for you. I've heard varying things about whether or not to include a year on appeals. We talked a little bit about that. You can use gift dates as well. For instance, what do you do about recurring gifts or multi-year pledges? Assuming you're looking at money received as opposed to committed, how do we handle this recurring gift thing as it relates to appeals?
So usually, I guess PhD is in the practice of changing over the appeal every year. So in January, you would change it to on the original recurring gift to the new appeal year, and with the new appeal, and then subsequently all the recurring gift payments that are created from that original record would then be coded to the right appeal.
Yep. Lauren, is that right?
Yeah. As for pledges, I think Lauren would be a better person to answer this.
Sorry, I was answering somebody else's. Say it again.
Busted. Somebody was asking, Lauren, it looks like you're in a new house. Is that right?
Multi-year pledges, it's going to depend on your structure. Again, most often we're seeing multi-year pledges, let's say with a capital campaign. You've got a capital campaign, it runs 3 years, somebody makes a 5-year pledge, then it's going to go over there. Recurring gifts, we record the income, so we change the appeal on those, but you can't really do that cleanly with a pledge. So it just looks at, we use date to see like when did the stuff come in. We're not going to go back and change each payment.
Yep. It seems like for our clients, when January rolls around, we all database administrators spending a lot of time changing over names and moving stuff. Is that right? Like January, like if you're DBA, it is a very normal thing for you to start the year by moving things and renaming and setting up your new appeals.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, Lauren, this question from Jordan. This is probably the one you're typing an answer to.
Yes.
They have an event. It's on the cusp of the fiscal year. So the person advocated for implementing an appeal for the event. But then Jordan thought they should use a package to distinguish whether it was auction, raffle, whatever. Alternatives, what do you suggest for Jordan?
That's going to depend on how you're reporting it. Again,
everybody hates these webinars so much. They're
yeah.
like, well, it depends.
So let's say you don't want, you're not going to use Untitled Designer. You are not needing people to look at a quick report on their own. You're generating this report. if your system currently uses appeals and packages, use appeals and packages for those gifts. If you need something that you've got a volunteer chair of the event who is going to come in and needs to be able to look at a dashboard that you build and they have a link to it and go look at it there, you're going to need appeals and or packages that are assigned to every gift because they can't look at an event otherwise. If you are going to, some of the database view canned reporting for an event is decent enough as it is. It really just depends on what you're most familiar with and how you're going to do it. If I were doing it, had my own database and could be the boss of myself, I would set it up so that there was an appeal for the event, dash source. So dash table sponsorships, it would be, 24 gala dash table, 24 gala dash sponsor, 24 gala dash whatever. And if there were multiple levels of sponsorships or things like that, and I needed to know in the money versus in the counts, how many table sponsors did we have? How many brochure sponsors? How many program sponsors did we have? You can do that in the event and the participant data. If I need to know it in the money, I've got to track it in the appeal or the package.
Well said. Okay. Let's go on. Good question from Jacqueline here. Austen, this one's for you. Thoughts on appeals or on online third-party platforms you may not have control over. So like one I've run across recently is PayPal. Some gifts are coming through as generalized donations. Others are third-party fundraisers like GoFundMe's. Complicated limits report. I mean, thoughts, Austen, comments on this, what she's asking about the third-party gift processors?
Yeah, so you can do it multiple ways.
No, we can no longer say it depends. We have to give people the only one clear answer.
In my experience, I have tracked this as an appeal called PayPal. And then in the packages underneath, the specific areas where money can come into PayPal that you might not know about, right? So the GoFundMe, there's like there's some gaming platform things can come in through eBay, like all of that would be high level packages, like just locations where money can come in and then it's distributed by PayPal. Because the organization I was with, it was important for us to know what money was coming through PayPal, so who was giving that way through these third-party sites, and then subsequently what sites were bringing in the most money. Yep. So that's why we set it up that way.
Okay. How do you guys handle, what do you do with just the general? So we talked about the general donation page. We talked about, of course, if you have an appeal, you're going to have multiple donation pages and you're going to lead people there to make life easy. But you still, as a nonprofit, have like the defaults. Like if you click give now on a website, how do you guys set that up? What do you do with that?
I'm going to have a general website appeal.
Same. Okay. You can't really make assumptions based on how gifts are coming in. Someone put in the chat earlier that you can put a source code on some URLs to bring in sort of that hidden sub information. I think you can do it on Online Express with what they call magic links. So if you go to you set up a form, you go to the last tab, there's like a little box there called magic links. Click on that and go experiment today. And so you can hand out sort of customized URLs that will bring the data into the database for you.
Okay. Excellent. Somebody posted something about sub funds. What are we talking about there? Austen, did you track that? Some of these I'm going back and it was like a topic like at the hand. It probably made sense. Maybe it doesn't now.
I think it was around when we were talking about funds specifically, between Evergreen or Recreate every year. Sub funds aren't really a native feature within Razor's Edge. So that would have to be something that you're band-aiding on the record to come up with a solution. So there is a possibility that you could use gift subtype, because that data also goes over to Razor or to Financial Edge when you post to the GL, but you would have to be very cognizant of how data is translated from Razor's Edge to Financial Edge to set that up in a way that it would work well for both systems. And it would probably create even more work for your finance team and probably need a standard that's written out to explain how this works and how to keep it consistent in the future.
I'd also consider, do those need their own campaign?
Yes.
Roll up like funds into a campaign, and I answered it in text, but you could use some naming convention things, but it gonna need some more discussion, quite frankly.
Yeah. JR had a couple of comments on here that I thought were good. So just commenting, and you guys can validate this. When you create a new appeal with the same package and segment stuff, you can just use that copy from option, right?
Use that copy from everywhere in your campaign,
Always.
funds, appeals, all of it. Use it.
How is
for
that
all.
not our lead recommendation here? Is
Yeah.
like always use copy from.
Also, I didn't know about that for the 12 years in which I've been using Razor's Edge, and I learned about it last week, and it blew my mind.
Welcome to PSG. Okay, that's good. We know we're learning as we go. So GR, absolutely right. Use copy from, and then this was just a good comment on the, like when we're talking about alphanumeric stuff. So the set of packages to identify appeal segments, use a consistent number. So what JR does is 03 for alumni. And if you want to query that segment, you're using 03, and then they do 2403 for the package. So we could get into that, but that's a typical way, right? Yes, packages have a role. Lauren's made a good case for it. If you're not giant and sophisticated and you need to do a lot of reporting, you can move the packages up to appeal. But we understand also if you're big and sophisticated and have to use the complicated stuff, there is a really good role for package codes. Make sure you have a structure that makes sense. Do not just on a whim decide, I'm going to label this one WZ41, right? Like, don't do that. Make sure
I
that
would like them to be at the top of the list. Don't do that either.
underscore. Yeah. Okay. I think that tackles all of the big questions here. I'm going to share again. So some people were asking for this. For Ask Genius, if you want, it's February 6th is the date that we're doing that. We have a whole bunch of new webinars coming out. So we just talked through. So we basically do about 6 months at a time. Then we regroup and we decide, what do people want to hear more about. So look, if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, make sure you sign up for the newsletter. You'll get our next big rollout of webinars. If you have a topic you want us to tackle, just reply. When we send you the recording of this, reply and say, hey, Nick, I would love to see something on blah, 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 right? Let us know. This is what we love to do. So we have day jobs where we're raising a bunch of money and nerding out on Razor's Edge. And then this is the fun stuff we get to do. Share everything we learned, interact with folks. So check out Ask Genius, check out Automate Genius, sign up for the newsletter if you want to hear about upcoming webinars. And we will see you on the next one. All right. Lauren, Austen, you did great. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody on the call. We'll see you later.